The dim glow of the bedside lamp cast flickering shadows across the quiet bedroom. The woman sat beside the bed, gently dabbing a damp cloth over her husband's forehead. He lay there, motionless, his body unchanged since the accident that left him paralyzed years ago. His breath was steady, his eyes blank, staring at the ceiling as always. She had spent years caring for him, feeding him, bathing him, and speaking to him even when he gave no response. The doctors had said there was no hope of recovery. But she refused to abandon him. He was her husband. And if he had to live this way, then she would be by his side until the very end. But something had been off lately. It started small. At first, she thought she was imagining things. A pillow slightly out of place. The wheelchair moved just a little closer to the bed than where she had left it. A book she could swear had been on the table now lying on the floor. She dismissed it all as exhaustion playing tricks on her mind. Until last night. She had been reading by his bedside, as she always did before falling asleep. Just as her eyelids grew heavy, she thought she saw it, his fingers twitched. She had snapped fully awake, staring at his hand. But it remained still. She reached out, placing her fingers lightly over his palm. "If you can hear me, squeeze my hand," she whispered. Nothing. She held her breath and waited. Seconds passed. Nothing moved. Maybe she had imagined it. Maybe it was just a random muscle spasm. But deep down, something told her she wasn't wrong. And then, today, something else happened, something she couldn't ignore. She had stepped out to get groceries, leaving him alone in his usual position. But when she returned, his blanket was folded neatly at the foot of the bed. Her hands had gone cold. Her heart had pounded in her chest. She was sure she hadn't left it that way. The house was locked. No one else had been inside. So how did it move? That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay next to him, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. Her mind raced with questions, but the one that echoed the loudest was he really paralyzed? Or had he been lying to her all these years? She needed answers. She turned to the side, watching him in the dim light. He lay still, just as he always did. But now, she wasn't sure anymore. Her heart pounded as she made a decision. Tomorrow night, she would test him. And if she was right, if he really wasn't paralyzed, she would find out the truth, no matter how painful it might be. She had spent years devoted to him. But now, she wasn't sure who she was really caring for. The morning after her unsettling discovery, the wife couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Sitting across from her husband at the breakfast table, she studied him more closely than ever before. His face was unreadable, his expression the same as it had been for years, vacant, lifeless. But now, she knew better. She focused on the details. His breathing wasn't as steady as she had once believed. There were slight changes, subtle shifts, like someone trying to control it. His fingers, which were supposed to be completely immobile, twitched ever so slightly whenever he thought she wasn't looking. Her mind raced, trying to recall every strange moment over the years. There had been times when she found objects moved out of place. At first, she assumed she had simply forgotten where she had left them. But what if she hadn't? The front door had been unlocked on nights she was certain she had bolted it. A light left on in the hallway when she remembered turning it off. The unsettling whispers she sometimes heard in the middle of the night, whispers she had convinced herself were just her imagination. Could it all be connected? She needed proof. That night, as she prepared for bed, she decided to test him. Standing in front of him, she dropped a glass on the floor. It shattered loudly against the hardwood. He didn't flinch. Not even a blink. She forced a smile and pretended it was an accident before cleaning up the mess. But inside, her stomach churned. He was good. Too good. Determined to uncover the truth, she set up a hidden camera in their bedroom. She positioned it so it had a clear view of the bed and the doorway. If he was moving, if he was pretending, she would catch him. As she lay in bed that night, her body rigid with anticipation, she barely slept. But she forced herself to remain still, to act as if everything was normal. The next morning, as soon as she was alone, she retrieved the camera and played the footage. The first few hours were uneventful. He remained perfectly still, just as he always did. But then, around 3 a.m., something changed. Her breath caught in her throat as she saw his fingers flex, fully, deliberately. Then, slowly, impossibly, he moved his arm. She watched in stunned silence as, inch by inch, he lifted himself upright in bed. His head turned slightly, scanning the room as if making sure she was still asleep. Then, with eerie precision, he swung his legs over the side of the bed. He stood up. She covered her mouth with a shaking hand, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. But what happened next made her blood run cold. He walked toward the window, staring out into the darkness. Then, in a voice she had never heard before, cold, deep, foreign, he muttered something under his breath. A language she didn't recognize. Terror gripped her as she realized the horrifying truth. The man she had spent years caring for, the man she thought she knew better than anyone else, was a stranger. The air in the bedroom was thick with silence, save for the rhythmic hum of the clock ticking away on the nightstand. The wife sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the laptop screen, her breath shallow. The footage was grainy but clear enough to see. At exactly 3 a.m., her husband, her supposedly paralyzed husband, shifted under the covers. A moment later, he sat up. Her pulse pounded in her ears. She watched as he scanned the room cautiously, his eyes darting toward the bedroom door as if ensuring no one was watching. Then, slowly, he threw the blanket off and swung his legs over the side of the bed. Her body went cold. It was impossible. She had bathed him, dressed him, lifted him into his wheelchair every day for years. His legs were thin, his muscles atrophied, weren't they? Had she been so blind? The video continued. He stood. Not with difficulty, not hesitantly, but smoothly, as though the past years had been a lie. She slapped a hand over her mouth to keep from screaming. The camera's night vision captured his every movement. He walked toward the window with precise, calculated steps. His posture was different, straighter, more controlled. He reached the glass and stood there, staring into the darkness outside. Then, he spoke. But the words weren't in English. A guttural, low murmur, the sounds sharp and deliberate. It wasn't gibberish, he was speaking a language she had never heard before. Tears burned her eyes. Her husband, the man she had given her life to, was lying to her. But why? Her mind raced, desperately trying to make sense of what she was seeing. Then, something on the video made her stomach drop. From the darkness outside the window, a figure moved. She gasped, pausing the footage. The shape was faint, barely visible against the shadows, but it was there, someone standing just beyond the house, watching him. Her hand trembled as she pressed play again. Her husband lifted his hand and made a subtle gesture, his fingers curling and shifting in a rhythmic motion, almost like a signal. The figure outside didn't move, but she swore she saw its head tilt slightly, acknowledging the motion. Her husband stood there for several more minutes, unmoving. Then, as if remembering something, he turned around and walked back to bed. He lay down, adjusting himself into the exact same position she had left him in, and froze. The facade was back. The helpless, immobile man she had cared for so diligently was an act. Her stomach clenched with fury. Who was he really? And who was watching him from outside? A single thought lodged itself in her mind, more terrifying than anything she had ever faced: she had been living with a stranger. The air in the house felt different. The silence wasn't the same anymore, it wasn't peaceful, it was watchful. She couldn't shake the feeling that her husband was aware of her suspicions. Maybe he knew she had seen his fingers twitch. Maybe he had noticed her hesitation when caring for him. Maybe he could feel the weight of her stares at night when she pretended to be asleep but kept one eye slightly open, waiting for movement. But the biggest question remained unanswered: was he really paralyzed, or had he been lying all along? She needed more proof. The test that night, she decided to set a trap. She prepared everything as usual, helping him eat, adjusting his pillows, tucking him into bed. But this time, she did something different. She placed a glass of water on the very edge of the bedside table. Just enough that if he accidentally knocked it over, it would spill onto the wooden floor with a loud crash. Then, she sat across the room and watched. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Nothing happened. Her eyelids grew heavy, and she fought to stay awake. But just as sleep threatened to take over, she saw it. A slight movement. It wasn't his hand this time. It was his head. Barely noticeable. But she saw it. Her heart raced as she held her breath. The room was dimly lit, but she could see the way his fingers subtly curled inward. Then, the glass moved. It didn't fall, but it shifted slightly away from the edge, as if someone had carefully nudged it back to safety. Her blood ran cold. She sat frozen in place, watching him for any other signs, but he remained still. Pretending. At that moment, she knew the truth. He wasn't paralyzed. Digging into the past the next morning, she went straight to the basement. Her husband had never allowed her to touch his old belongings, always saying there was nothing of importance. But now, she was determined to uncover the truth. Dusty boxes lined the shelves, each labeled with dates she had never paid attention to before. She rifled through them, looking for anything: medical reports, old journals, something that could explain what was happening. And then she found it. A locked wooden box with a thick metal latch. She knew immediately that whatever was inside was important. Her hands trembled as she tried to pry it open, but it wouldn't budge. Frustrated, she looked around until she found an old hammer. One strong hit, and the latch broke off. Inside, there were stacks of documents, letters, and a small silver key. She picked up the papers first. They were hospital records, but something was wrong. The name on them didn't match her husband's full name. The date of birth was slightly different. Even the listed injury, spinal damage due to an accident, had been altered. Altered by who? And why? Flipping through the records, she noticed something even stranger: multiple different addresses over the years, different identities. Her husband had been living under several names before settling into this life with her. Who was he really? Her breath came in short gasps. The room felt suffocating. Then she remembered the key. What did it open? The key to the truth. She ran upstairs and checked every drawer, every cabinet. But nothing matched the size of the key. Then she remembered, there was one place she had never checked before. Under the bed. Her husband's bed frame had a wooden compartment underneath. He had once told her it was empty. She knelt down, reaching beneath the mattress. Her hands found the smooth edge of the wooden compartment, and she carefully pried it open. And there it was. A small, locked vault. Her heart pounded as she slid the key inside and turned it. The lock clicked open, and she lifted the lid. Inside were stacks of passports, wads of cash, and an old, leather-bound journal. She flipped open the journal, scanning the pages. Her husband's handwriting covered the sheets, but what she read didn't make sense. Pages filled with codes, numbers, names of people she didn't recognize. Some words were underlined multiple times: "They can't find me." Her stomach twisted. Who was after him? And why had he been pretending to be paralyzed for so long? She closed the journal, feeling dizzy. She needed to confront him. A shocking message. As she stood up, she heard something. A sound from behind her. She turned sharply. Her husband was awake. And for the first time in years, he was sitting up, watching her. Their eyes locked, and a slow, unsettling smile spread across his face. Then, in a voice she hadn't heard in years, he finally spoke, "I was hoping you wouldn't find that." The wife sat frozen, gripping the edge of the desk as the camera footage replayed over and over in her mind. Her husband, her paralyzed husband, had stood up. Walked. Spoken. And worst of all, she had no idea who or what he really was. Panic clawed at her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. She needed to act normal, to pretend she hadn't seen anything. If he had been faking for years, he was watching her just as much as she had been watching him. That day, she went through the motions. She prepared his food. She adjusted his pillows. She smiled. But inside, her mind raced. She needed answers. Digging through old records, she found the medical reports from his accident, the accident that supposedly left him paralyzed. But something was off. The records lacked critical details. There were no scans, no doctor's signatures, no real proof that he had ever been treated. Had he even been in a hospital at all? The thought made her dizzy. If his paralysis had been a lie, then what else had he been lying about? Then, she found it. A key. Small, metallic, with no markings. She had never seen it before, but it had been buried among his things as if he wanted to keep it hidden. What did it open? That night, the fear in her chest was replaced with something sharper, determination. She set up the hidden camera again, but this time, she adjusted the angle to get a clearer view. If he moved again, she would see everything. She barely slept, her body on edge as she waited for the hours to creep by. And then, at exactly 3 a.m., he moved. Her heart pounded as she watched him lift himself from the bed. He didn't hesitate this time, he moved quickly, purposefully. Instead of going to the window, he walked straight to the closet. She watched in stunned horror as he bent down, slid his hand across the floor, and lifted a hidden compartment. A compartment she had never known existed. He reached inside and pulled something out. A device. Small, sleek, and glowing faintly with an eerie blue light. She had never seen anything like it. It didn't look like a phone, or a tablet, or anything familiar. What was it? Before she could even process the thought, he did something that made her blood turn to ice. He spoke. But not in English. The same deep, foreign-sounding language from the night before. The words sent a chill down her spine, each syllable sharp and strange. And then, the bedroom window rattled. Her breath caught in her throat as she turned toward the sound. A shadow moved outside, shifting against the dim glow of the streetlights. Someone was out there. Watching. Her husband didn't react. He kept speaking in that unnatural, chilling voice, the device in his hand pulsing with light. And then, it answered. A distorted voice, echoing back from the device, speaking in the same foreign tongue. Her stomach twisted. Who was he talking to? Or worse, what was he talking to? She bit down on her knuckles to keep herself from gasping. Then, just as quickly as it had begun, the conversation stopped. Her husband placed the device back into the hidden compartment, shut it, and returned to bed, his body once again motionless, playing the part of the helpless man he had pretended to be for years. Terror crashed over her like a wave. She had been living with a lie. And outside their home, in the darkness, someone was watching them. The wife's heart pounded as she gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white. She had followed her husband for miles after discovering his bed empty in the middle of the night. He moved with purpose, slipping through the shadows as if he had done it 100 times before. She watched from the safety of her parked car as he reached an abandoned warehouse at the edge of town. A single streetlight flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows on the cracked pavement. Then, she saw him. The man from the security footage. The stranger who had been lurking outside their house. He stood near the entrance, his face obscured by the darkness. Her husband approached him without hesitation, and they began to talk. She leaned forward, straining to hear. But what she heard made no sense. They weren't speaking English. The same guttural, sharp language she had heard in the security footage filled the air, their voices urgent but controlled. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Her husband wasn't just faking his paralysis, he was hiding from something. And this man, this shadow lurking in their lives, was part of it. She pulled out her phone, trembling, and hit record. Then she heard something that made her blood run cold. Her husband's voice, clear as day, speaking in English now, "If they find out I'm alive, they'll kill me." Her breath caught in her throat. The man responded, voice low and clipped. "They're already looking for you. Your wife, she's getting too close." She clamped a hand over her mouth to keep from gasping aloud. This was bigger than she ever imagined. She had spent years mourning her husband's accident, sacrificing her life to care for him, only to learn there was no accident. He had been hiding. Pretending. And now, she was part of it too. A sick feeling twisted in her stomach. What had she gotten herself into? Suddenly, the stranger stiffened, his head snapping toward her car. She froze. Had he seen her? Her husband turned slowly, his eyes scanning the darkness. Panic surged through her veins. She slid lower into the seat, barely breathing. After a tense moment, the two men resumed their conversation, but the stranger's voice carried a warning. "If she finds out the truth, you know what must be done." Tears pricked her eyes. The truth? What truth? And what did he mean, what must be done? Her hands shook as she turned off her phone's recording and gripped the keys. She had heard enough. She needed to get out of there, now. As she started the car, she risked one last glance through the windshield. Her husband was looking straight at her. Their eyes locked. And for the first time in years, she didn't see the man she loved. She saw a stranger. A dangerous one. She couldn't breathe. For years, she had lived under the assumption that her husband was helpless, a man bound to a wheelchair, needing her constant care. But now, as he sat up in bed, fully aware, fully capable, she realized she had been living a lie. Her fingers trembled as she clutched the journal, the cryptic notes swirling in her mind. "I was hoping you wouldn't find that," he had said. His voice was calm, too calm for a man whose secret had just been uncovered. But she wasn't the same woman she had been yesterday. She wasn't afraid anymore. "Who are you?" she demanded, stepping backward toward the door. His eyes followed her every movement. "I never wanted to lie to you." His voice was gentle, but she didn't trust it. "Everything I did, was to protect you." "Protect me?" She let out a bitter laugh. "You pretended to be paralyzed for years. You let me take care of you, let me give up my life for you. And now you expect me to believe this was all for me?" He exhaled slowly. "I had no choice." "Then tell me the truth." He was silent for a moment, as if weighing his options. Then, finally, he spoke. "The truth is revealed. I used to work for an organization, one that dealt with information people weren't supposed to know." His voice was steady, but there was something in his eyes, something close to fear. "They called us ghosts. We erased identities, fabricated new ones, destroyed records. But one day, I discovered something I wasn't supposed to. Something so dangerous that I had only two choices, run, or die." She stared at him, heart pounding. "So you faked the accident?" "I needed a way to disappear completely. If I had simply gone into hiding, they would have found me. But a crippled man, a helpless husband being cared for by his wife? That's not someone they'd look for. Her mind reeled. It made sense. Too much sense. She thought back to the inconsistencies. The hospital records that didn't match, the missing medical files, the strange symbols in the journal. Everything had been leading to this moment. But then another, darker thought crept in. If they were looking for you, she whispered, realization dawning on her, then they'll be looking for me too. His silence was her answer. The danger is closer than she thought. She shook her head. I don't believe this. If you were so careful, why did you let me find out? His face tensed. Because they know where we are. Her blood turned to ice. The room suddenly felt smaller, the walls pressing in. He stood up from the bed, moving toward her. They've been watching us. She took a step back. How do you know? He turned toward the window and lifted the curtain slightly. Her stomach dropped. Across the street, parked just beyond the dim glow of the streetlights, was a black car. It had been there all day. She had thought nothing of it. But now, she saw it for what it was. They weren't just looking for him. They were watching her, too. And suddenly, everything clicked. The moved objects in the house. The slight noises she had dismissed at night. Someone had already been inside. They were waiting. Her voice came out shaky. What do we do? His expression hardened. We run. An escape plan. She swallowed the lump in her throat. Where? He walked to the closet, pushing back the clothes to reveal a hidden compartment in the back panel. Inside was a duffel bag, stuffed with stacks of cash, a gun, and a second set of passports. He tossed one to her. Take this. Burn your old ID, your old documents. We leave everything behind. She stared at the passport in her hands. The name printed wasn't hers. The photo looked like her, but something was off. Her hair was slightly different, her age altered. It was her, but not her. She had officially become someone else. A chill ran through her. She looked up at her husband. How long have you been planning this? His eyes met hers. Since the day I met you. Her breath caught in her throat. She wanted to scream. Wanted to throw the passport at him and demand an explanation. But outside, the black car's headlights flicked on. It was time to go. One last test. She grabbed the duffel bag and ran to the front door. We can't just run forever. We need a plan. We do have a plan. He opened a laptop from the bag, showing her a map with multiple locations marked. They won't expect us to leave so soon. We can get a head start. She exhaled sharply. And then what? Live on the run forever? His jaw clenched. It's the only way. But deep down, she knew something wasn't right. He had planned this too well. She looked at him again, this man she had loved, this man she had dedicated her life to. And suddenly, she had a terrifying thought. What if he wasn't running from them? What if he was running from something worse? And what if she had just made the biggest mistake of her life, by choosing to trust him? The wife's hands trembled as she clutched the hidden device. The truth was worse than she had ever imagined. Her husband wasn't just lying, he was hiding. And now, she knew too much. She didn't have time to think. A sound echoed from downstairs, footsteps. Heavy. Purposeful. They found us. She barely had time to react before the front door burst open. Men in black tactical gear flooded the house, their movements swift and precise. No words. No hesitation. They were here for him. For a split second, she thought about running. But then she turned to see her husband, no longer pretending to be paralyzed, no longer playing the role of the helpless man. He was already moving. Faster than she had ever seen him, he grabbed her wrist and pulled her behind him. His expression was one she had never seen before, sharp, focused, dangerous. A gunshot rang out. A window shattered. Her husband didn't hesitate. He yanked open the hidden compartment in the floor, grabbing a sleek black weapon she had never seen before. It looked nothing like any gun she recognized, sleek, futuristic, glowing with the same eerie blue light as the device. He fired. A single pulse of energy shot through the air, striking one of the masked intruders. The man dropped instantly, his body convulsing before going still. Panic surged through her. Who was he? Before she could process it, he was pulling her toward the back door. "Move," he ordered. His voice was low, controlled, completely different from the weak, quiet tone she had been used to for years. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but now wasn't the time. More gunfire erupted behind them as they sprinted into the night. He led her through the woods behind their home, never slowing, never faltering. She had so many questions. How long had he been planning this escape? Had he known they were coming? And then, the thought that nearly made her collapse, had she led them to him? The moment she started digging into his past, the moment she discovered the truth, things started happening. Was this her fault? They ran until her legs burned, until her breath came in ragged gasps. Finally, they reached an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. He yanked open a rusted metal door and pulled her inside. Only then did he turn to face her. For the first time in years, he looked her in the eyes, not as her husband, not as a broken man, but as someone else entirely. She swallowed hard. "Tell me the truth." He exhaled slowly, as if deciding how much he was willing to say. Then, he spoke. "They think I have something." She clenched her fists. "Do you?" His jaw tensed. "Yes." A million thoughts flooded her mind. And the accident? The paralysis, fake. She felt like the air had been punched from her lungs. "But I had no choice," he continued, his voice steady. "They were hunting me. If they thought I was helpless, useless, they would stop looking." Her mind spun. "Who are you?" He hesitated. "Then, I worked for them. For years. Until I learned something I wasn't supposed to. And when I tried to leave, they made sure I couldn't." The pieces were finally clicking together. The erased medical records. The hidden vault. The men outside their house. She had been married to a man she never really knew. And now, she was part of whatever dark secret he had been running from. Before she could respond, the sound of approaching vehicles filled the night air. He turned, his eyes darkening. "They found us." This was it. No more running. No more secrets. It was time to fight. The house was eerily silent. She sat in the living room, staring at the scattered documents in front of her, the blueprints, the encrypted files, the classified reports, all pieces of a life she never knew existed. Her husband sat across from her. For the first time in years, he wasn't pretending. He wasn't the helpless man she had cared for, the paralyzed husband she had devoted herself to. He was someone else entirely. And now, she knew the truth. He had faked his paralysis to stay hidden. His so-called accident had never happened. He had been running, from powerful people who wanted him dead. People who had no mercy for traitors. "You should have never found out," he said quietly. She laughed bitterly. "Then maybe you shouldn't have married me." His expression didn't change. He wasn't angry, wasn't regretful. Just, resigned. She wanted to scream at him, demand to know why he had let her waste years of her life tending to him, why he had let her suffer, thinking he was broken and helpless while he had been lying to her all along. But she already knew the answer. Love. It wasn't just her love for him that had trapped her in this nightmare, it was his love for her. He had hidden the truth to protect her. But in doing so, he had destroyed them both. You have a choice, he said, his voice soft but firm. Forget everything. Walk away. I'll make sure you're safe. Or, stay. But if you stay, there's no going back. Her hands clenched into fists. She thought of all the years she had spent by his side, feeding him, dressing him, believing in him. And now, she had to choose, pretend none of this happened and walk away, or step into the darkness with him. She took a shaky breath. I don't know who you are anymore, she whispered. I don't know if I ever did. Pain flickered in his eyes. Then leave. She stood up, every muscle in her body screaming at her to run. But she didn't. She reached into her pocket, pulling out the final message she had found in the vault. A slip of paper with 6 chilling words, written in her husband's handwriting. If she finds out, protect her. Her breath hitched. She looked at him one last time. The man who had shattered her trust, who had built their life on a lie. And yet, he had never planned to hurt her. The world around them was built on deception, betrayal, survival. But in the end, love was the only truth that remained. Tears burned her eyes. You don't have to protect me. Then she turned and walked away, leaving behind everything she had ever known. As she reached the door, she heard his voice one last time. I always loved you. She didn't look back. She just kept walking.